So our other quick bread we're going to show you how to make is just regular biscuits. And these are so quick and easy that you could whip up a batch of these really, really easily, again, for any meal, because they're a bread that's adaptable to any meal or snack that you would like. So the technique is just slightly different than muffins, so we'll go through that as we do the recipe. Our first ingredient is 2 cups of flour. Again, we're using all-purpose white flour. You could use half whole wheat flour, again, to add some fiber and a little more nutrition. So whatever you kind of like. You don't want to go totally whole wheat, as oftentimes totally whole wheat flour, your product is kind of dry and heavy and may not rise like you want it to. So half and half is good, or you can go 100% white flour. Again, when measuring your flour, be sure to do it, measure it in light and fluffy into your cup and use your knife to level it off. Into our flour, we're going to put 1 tablespoon of baking powder. With our muffins, we had the baking powder, and also eggs are a good leavening. But in biscuits, all you're going to have is the baking powder. So with all sorts of leavenings like baking powder, baking soda, you want to make sure that they're fresh, and in the cupboard you keep the lid on so that they don't dry out and don't lose their potency. And a tablespoon of just regular white sugar, and a teaspoon of salt. So we are going to whisk, just kind of lightly stir this together. The trick with biscuits is to stir them the least amount that you can. You want them good and mixed, but you don't want to over-mix them. Our next ingredient is 1/3 cup of butter, and again, we're using real butter, and it's marked on the package. And for biscuits, you want the butter to be very cold. For our muffins, we wanted it at room temperature so that it would cream. This we're going to cut in, that's a term, mixing our butter into our flour. It's called cutting in. And we're going to use a pastry blender, which is this tool. It's a series of kind of sharp blades that you just, and you need a knife to kind of get your butter off, and it'll take a minute for it to get going. You can also, if you do not have a pastry blender, you can do this with 2 forks. It's a lot harder, but it can be done. And I shouldn't say harder, just maybe more time consuming. The goal is to have your flour and butter, when it is mixed together, that looks like a small pea. Small peas in here. So we've got a little more because we're getting our butter off. And again, there are a million biscuit recipes. This one is just easy homemade biscuits. And so again, you can kind of check which recipe you like. Today we're just going to do normal sized biscuits, but you could do them a little bigger if you wanted them for something special. Okay, you might want to zoom in. We're starting to look like small peas. Okay, and there we go. the butter is basically cut into the flour, and it's about the size of peas. Oh, we have a few bigger ones. So just kind of. And so that's why your butter has to be cold. If it is too soft, it just turns it into a kind of mushy dough. Okay, our next step is now with a spoon. We are going to stir in 3/4 of a cup of milk. And we're going to do that very slowly, and we're going to use a fork because, again, you want to mix this just as gently as possible. And with the spoon, we tend to overmix things like this. So with your fork, and just slowly work your milk into the batter, into the dough. And you want to get it so it's like a soft dough. And at the end of your 3/4 cup, if it's not quite soft enough dough, then you will add just a smidgen of milk at a time until it gets to the right consistency.
And this is why 60 years ago there were no recipes. You started with a little flour and you cut in your butter and dumped a little of this in, and depending on the weather and all of that, you made biscuits by feel because they did this every day. So we laugh because my great grandma sure as heck didn't have recipes written down. You just made them from memory and by feel.
Okay, so we're to the stage of a soft dough. And you'll kind of maybe have to work a little in with your fingers, which is fine. So that's why, again, you need to have clean hands when you start this project or any cooking project. Clean hands. And we don't want to add any more liquid because our dough is wet enough. We just need to work. And I'm basically working the flour in with my fingers. And the recipe said I would turn this out on a floured surface and fold it over 10 times. I've basically done all the folding over or kneading that it's going to need. So we'll put a little bit of flour out on our cupboard here, countertop. And with this, we're going to roll it with our hands. We don't even need a rolling pin. You want to roll it about 1 inch thick and not really roll it. We're just going to pat it down till it's about 1 inch thick. And I always measure 1 inch from my knuckle of my thumb to the end of my thumb. So we're about. And this should make, it says, 6 biscuits. So that's going to be, this is our biscuit cutter. If you don't have a biscuit cutter, you can use the top of a glass that's about this size. Just put it, always start cutting your biscuits at the edge. We're going to bake them on an ungreased, dark baking pan. You don't need to grease. We've got enough grease in here with our butter. So you don't need to grease your pan.
When you cut your biscuits the first time, you want to place them very
Judiciously.
specific on there, because they're always prettier the first time you roll out the dough. By the time you roll out press it out the second time, it's not near as pretty to get those next couple biscuits. And there's probably enough to make 2 biscuits left.
And so I'll kind of squish that together. The more you work your dough, the tougher it will become. So that's why what Erin said, you want to get it so that the 6 of them, so we'll just kind of put this together.
And the ones you do like this
aren't ever pretty,
no.
Really.
They're the ugly biscuits, and you get to eat them when they first come out of the oven, and you don't have to share them with anyone. And so if you cook your biscuits touching, like on your cookie sheet, they'll have softer edges. If you spread them out on your cookie sheet, they'll have crispier edges. So it's personal preference.
I personally like them spread out, so that's what we're doing today. These bake at 425 degrees, so they bake really at a high temperature for not very long, for 12 to 15 minutes. And this one we'll have to take out early. It's a little fatty or not near as thick. And as you can see, these are the ones we had to redo our dough, and so they're not as high as the first ones we did, but they'll all taste delicious. So Erin has a thing that they do at their house.
So while these are baking, we'll talk about, we make biscuit sandwiches at our house. So I make biscuits. We make a lot of sourdough biscuits at my house because I have a sourdough starter. So once a week we make sourdough biscuits, and then we just cut them in half.
When they're cool.
Once they're cool, and we bake eggs in a muffin tin. I actually have a square brownie pan that we love the best. But in there we just scramble an egg with a little bit of milk. We add onion, we add bacon bits, we add cheese, some salt and pepper, and then we bake them in either the muffin tin or that brownie square pan. And then just put one of those in between the biscuit. We wrap it up in saran wrap, and then put them in the freezer in like a freezer Ziploc bag. And then every day, my husband just heats one up, and that's what he eats on his way to work. And he really enjoys them. They're quick and easy. We do them on a Sunday afternoon and make a week or two's worth and have them ready to go. So that's something we really enjoy doing. And he generally takes his with an egg, and I usually save a few and eat them with choke cherry jelly on my way to work. So kind of depends on what your preference is, but it's kind of a fun way to, and I think we figured it out cost-wise on the last batch, and I think for every egg sandwich, we have like 24 cents into it. So if you go to McDonald's and you order an Egg McMuffin sandwich, you're going to pay $2.50, so you're paying 10 times for what you would pay to make it at home. So for us, it's very cost efficient. 2, we don't live anywhere near McDonald's, so that's really not an option in our world. And 3, we've also controlled the sodium and just what's in them. So we can make them to our personal preference. We know there's not any preservatives in them, and they're just quick and easy and really tasty. So that's what our favorite way is to do them. So
the other thing, you could personalize them, as Erin said, instead of like your bacon bits in your scrambled egg, do the scrambled egg and put a sausage patty on, or
Yep.
strips of bacon, whatever you would like.
Well, and you can use whatever cheese you like. You can use, if you use purple onion, we did that one time, you get funny colored eggs. Just, they will look bluish green when they cool.
You could do other veggies. You could do green peppers or red peppers or yellow peppers in your mixture to spice them up.
And they freeze fantastic. So just a really quick, easy, with a little bit of prep, and for 1/10 of the cost, you can have a really, really easy breakfast good to go.
So with that, we're going to let them bake between 12 to 15 minutes. And when we're done, Erin will get some pictures, and they will be included, both the muffins and the biscuits, on the videos and the recipes. So we'll hope you guys get some baking done and have enjoyed this winter series of cooking ideas. So good luck and have a great semester at school.